Hello there. Currently, it's not raining. We've had all the weather today, so it could get very windy and you might not hear me, but just for now, we're going to go for it. I'm Laura Donkers. I'm an ecological artist, which means that I'm essentially interested in probably everything, but particularly being outside in the environment. And that environment can be a natural one or an urban one, or as we are today in the gardens of Lakehousearts, where we have some beautiful trees, some of them, native, some of them are in flower, but just across from them, that just behind us there's a big motorway, and just across from them is a very modern building. And all of that is interesting to an artist. So the approach I'm going to teach you today is a way to overcome the fear of working on a large white sheet of paper. I'm actually working in a sketchbook, and the beauty of a sketchbook, particularly a hardbound one, is that it sort of gives you a drawing board as well as a holder for your paper. I also have a piece of elastic on the end to stop the wind getting under the pages and actually ripping the pages off. So when you're going to work outside, there are a few things that you have to think about. One of those is location. Another of those is materials, and also about how you are going to protect yourself, maybe from the rain, maybe from the sun, and protect your work from some of the worst of the elements. But actually sometimes the beauty of working outside is that you actually get to interact with the environment, and you can get frustrated, but you can also kind of go with it and enjoy it, which is my approach. So today, if you want to draw along with me, all you need to do is get yourself a piece of paper. It can be any type of paper. A whitish type of paper would be good. And if there's any chance that you have charcoal, this is just made from twigs. So it's in the art shops, it would be called willow charcoal. It's a very nice thing to work with because it's very soft, and it allows you to sort of work in all sorts of quite free ways. The process we're going to do today is called subtractive charcoal drawing. And what I'm going to do is cover the whole sheet in charcoal. The idea of that is that you first of all get rid of the whiteness, which at times can be a bit daunting to have to think, where do I start on this big piece of white paper? So if you start off by covering the whole thing in charcoal, well, you've already made your marks. You've overcome whatever fear you might have had. Whoops. And you can start to feel a bit freer about what comes next. I have to say, this particular location is completely new to me. So you might want to work outside looking across at your garden, or out over your neighbors, or from your place of work, perhaps in lunchtime. But you can also come to a completely new place, and using this technique, you can start to see what there is around you. There are a few drops coming down on this, but we're not going to worry about that. Oops. So as you can see, using the side of the charcoal, I've been able to cover these 2 pages quite quickly. Now, I'm going to start drawing. And what I'm going to draw with is an eraser. You can, I'm sure you're familiar with an eraser like this. But this particular one you can get from an art shop, and it's particularly for rubbing into charcoal. There's also another eraser here that's in a pencil form that allows you to make, maybe to feel more like you're drawing with a pencil, except that it's rubbing away. But you can also just use a rubber like this or one like this, and you can cut, you can sharpen some of the edges with a craft knife to give you finer lines or broader lines, or you can use the soft part, the soft edges, to more or less mold marks. And the other beautiful thing with charcoal is that if you don't like what you've done, you can just cover it over again with more charcoal. So it's a very free and easy approach. Now, when I look at this scene here, there is this modern building in the distance, and there are trees and leaves and plants around. But what I'm looking for in this first stage are the white areas, because what I'm going to do is draw in with the eraser the whitest areas first. So the building that's in the distance is very white. So I don't know if you'll be able to see this very clearly, but according to how much I press, I can take almost all of that charcoal away. Whereas if I more softly apply the charcoal, I just take almost like the top layer. So already there's like a whiter part and a more grey part. And that's really the beauty of using charcoal. In between what I'm looking at, there is a big trunk of a tree, and I want to keep that dark. So I'm going to do the last little bit of the wall that I can see. I'm going to leave the space for the tree, where the tree is, and then continue to draw in. And it's very coarsely drawn marks indicating where that building is. There's also the building sort of continues round. So I'm going to indicate some of that going off into the distance. The rain has interfered a little bit with the marks that I've put down, but as I say, I can continue to put more charcoal on as I go. So these are the basic marks of the building. There's a bit of a shower coming through, but it's okay. Now, normally, when you're working in New Zealand, one of the features is very strong light, and you're constantly hit by the brightness of the sunlight, and that creates lots of shadows, which make it easy to use this sort of method. But of course today we have rain and we have almost no sun and very, very sort of diffused light. And now paper's getting quite wet. Hello again. We came in from the wind and the rain, and that was quite simple to do. Just close up the book, gather your materials, and get back inside. We could have had maybe a big umbrella that would have protected the work, but we've done what we can do. And I'm going to continue to draw by looking through the window. And this might be sometimes the only choice that you do have for being able to work with what's outside. So now we can show you two different approaches in one video. Okay, I'm going to go back to drawing in the white areas that I can see. And now the position of them has changed because I'm sitting a little bit higher up, but I can still see enough of what I was looking at before to continue to add those in. There's going to be quite a bit of debris produced on the carpet, so we'll just have to clean that up afterwards. What I was talking about before was the effect of light on particularly light coming through green leaves, and my particular interest is around the natural environment, and it can be very delicate, the sort of effect that you see. Just going to blow off some of this. So using your rubber, finding a way to invent ways to use your rubber to try to record some of what you're seeing is part of artistic approaches. But it isn't that there is one way to use materials, and adapting your situation, adapting to the conditions, just going with what is possible to do is really a big part of being an artist. So what I'm doing now is drawing in this particular tree, which I'm afraid I don't know the name of, but it has very small leaves that are all sort of falling down, falling towards the ground. And that's the effect that I'm honing in on and drawing. So in a way, what I'm doing is indicating that there is something quite different here to what was referenced here in the white building. And this tree, the branches from this tree is going right across where that building is. And obviously, when I'm making marks like this, I'm not drawing every part of the tree. And I'll show you what I intend with that in the next stage. So I'm just going to quickly draw in almost like the area that that tree is covering. There's also a lot more of it here. Now over on this side, there's a magnolia tree that has very different leaves, and there's a range from almost like a brown to a green, and in between that there are little pieces of light, very white, because the sun that's now come out again is shining on the top surface, which is kind of like a leathery sort of leaf. And that's what I'm drawing. Not really the leaves, but the light that's falling on those leaves. And because it's a different shaped leaf, I'm making a different mark. And I just want to indicate how far that covers the area that I'm looking at. So this is what I mean by being inventive. You can say, oh, that mark, that doesn't look like a leaf. But actually, when the light shines on that leaf, there's like a patch of the leaf that is illuminated. And that's what I want to show. So now the second stage of drawing in this way is to use something called Workable Fixative. I'm not sure if you can see that clearly, but it's a colorless sort of fixative that you put over charcoal and it sets the top surface. But when it says workable, it means that you can put more charcoal on top and you can start to work in that. So the idea of what I want to do now is really set these white areas. And it's quite good to do this in the open air. And certainly beside an open window, because you don't want to breathe this material in. So I'm just going to let that dry just a couple of minutes, just to be sure that it's set this top surface. Now, if I look at what I've drawn, okay, it looks a bit chaotic, but in honing in on, starting to hone in on the subject that I'm looking at, I'm starting to recognize, okay, this is where I am looking across at this scene. And I'm also looking back at what I want to draw next. So that's the surface dry. I'm going to go over, not all of it, but I'm going to deepen in the areas, particularly the trunk of the magnolia tree, because this fold in the paper is a bit distracting, because there's definitely not a long white line running through the scene I'm looking at. So the benefit of an approach like this is that you can fairly quickly cover an area and start to break down points of what you're looking at, rather than just seeing a big area and thinking, where do I start? Already there's a lot of information starting to gather. So I'm going in and I'm drawing with the charcoal a basic outline of where that tree is. And not only does that slightly darken the first layer that hasn't been rubbed, what it's starting to do is slightly bring forward that tree, because that tree sits between where I'm sitting and where the distant building is. So you're kind of starting to fit in the spatial qualities of what you're looking at. And that's how you start to build up a feeling of depth in your drawing. I'm now going to start to draw in where there are other trees. They're all quite thin, but they're starting to show more of this middle ground. And I'm not concentrating too much on the how light or dark they are. I just want to mark them in, because of course I can use the rubber again to take some of the depth of colour out if I want. There's a lovely long branch that is coming right the way across the scene here that holds these soft leaves that are falling down to the ground. So on this side of the tree, there is the light is falling. And also on this side of each of these trees, the light is falling. So I'm now going to set that part of the drawing. How do we do with time?
I think we're fantastic. You can just keep going.
Okay.
I think, Laura,
Okay.
It's just so remarkable to see. So remarkable just to see this evolving artwork just start to take shape. So, yeah, go for it.
Okay. So what I've noticed now was sitting up from this slightly elevated, that I can actually see the road, and that makes a very interesting curve. That is maybe the reason why I've noticed it now is because I started to draw that long branch of the tree. And I think that is the wonderful thing about drawing, that when you want to, you think, oh, I really like this view. Where do you start? And then if you focus so heavily on like one thing, you can sort of lose track of everything else that is there. And you could maybe have, like in my case, I was very drawn to the magnolia tree. I might just end up with a drawing of the magnolia tree. But because of starting in this way with the charcoal, I can't focus on the magnolia tree. I have to set that magnolia tree in its place. And in that process, you start to see much more, because, you know, even in a room like this, you know, nothing sits in isolation. It's all relating to something else. And that is really the beauty of kind of working outside. Just, you can be so overwhelmed with there being so much to draw, but actually if you just start in a very kind of big, bold way, it can really open up your mind to what there is to see. So anyway, enough talking. I'm going to start to indicate where this road is. Now, because I set that first layer where I did the white marks first, I've made quite a bit of resistance with being able to rub into. See, I'm rubbing over that, but I'm not rubbing away very much. And you can be frustrated at times about trying, how do I get this to work? Well, all you have to remember is that if an area is too light, you come in with charcoal and you give yourself something to rub away. And because I started making these white lines when I was down there, now I need to erase some of those white lines. And I can do that so easily just with adding more charcoal, which will then give me a surface that I can rub into because that's sitting on the top there. And maybe it doesn't exactly look like a road, but for me, I've kind of marked something else of interest. This white mark that I put here is actually, must be the notice for Lakehousearts. And from that is the road. And in front of that then is this tree and the branch. And beside it is the magnolia. And then these separate, I don't know if they're magnolias or what they are, but anyway, thinner stemmed trees beside it. And away off into the distance, there's another type of tree with completely different leaf. But for now, this is, I would say, the theme that I'm interested in starting to work on. You know, I could spend a day, I could spend a week working much more into a drawing like this. But what something like this has helped me to see is start to see what is here. So that is the beauty of drawing, that really until you start to try to draw something, you can't really fully see it. And the more that you draw, the more you come to see. So as a practice, it's amazing. I'm probably going to leave this drawing for now, and I want to talk a little bit about the online workshop that I would like to, I'm going to be presenting from March onwards. So something like this can be a one-off practice, and you could actually work in this way and never want to do anything else. But it can also be a start of learning much more about your subject matter. As we've seen today, preparation before going out to work outside, you know, you need to work out, well, what am I going to work on? How am I going to come to just one place to work? And actually, I would recommend that. That was how I started really developing my practice when I was first an art student. I found it almost impossible to work in the studio, and I was always escaping outside. And over a time, I developed a way of building a temporary studio outside, and that's really what I've been doing for a long time. So the first week would be looking at preparation, setting up a temporary outdoor studio, the type of materials that you can use in that space that are free and easy to use. You're not talking about making very fine, very clean work. You're kind of making rather wild work at times, but that doesn't mean that it's any less valuable. And what it helps you to do, I mean, you constantly hear art tutors talking about playing, and really sometimes adults can find it very hard to play. But when you use materials like this that feel kind of, they're low cost, below charcoal is incredibly cheap. Paper is easy to come by. You can be more relaxed in how you approach making your work. So, and there are other materials you can use in that way. So we'll go through that. We'll also talk about how to identify a location that's kind of going to be meaningful to you. That's really what matters, I think. If you want to make art, you have to make art that you want to make, and it has to help you feel more yourself and allow you to grow in your knowledge and your skill. So therefore it must matter to you. And we'll look at the marks that you can make with all these materials, and we will start to explore that. The next week will be about exploration. What is it about the space that you are observing? Because that physical environment is essentially what's drawn you there. And like I say, it could be the view from your garden, but what else is going on around your garden? And ways of approaching that space can become much more interesting to somebody to look at the work that you've made, as well as for you to make it. So that will be what week 2 is about. And then week 3 is about maybe getting into that a bit more. So how you can use composition and how you use your materials in a more painterly way. Although my practice is mostly drawing, it can easily be applied to painting. So if you prefer to draw with paint, this course would definitely be entirely suitable for you too. And the last 2 weeks hopefully you will have set up your space to work, and we'll spend those last 2 weeks working on a much larger work, like a sustained work. And the group we will have much more of a sharing of experiences and what you are producing. So that will be a much more interactive, maybe. I mean, I still hope the previous weeks will be interactive, but it will be more about, okay, how are you approaching this work, sharing your experiences and ideas with the other participants. And I will also be producing a large work at the same time that I can film and have little footage of that to sort of share with you as well. So I think that's us for this taster session. Hope you've been managing to keep up with what I've been doing.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much. Gosh, we've been one exciting session going through a quick sprawl and then a quick run inside and resetting your work. I mean, the work, you can really start to see where the three-dimensionality of that space is starting to come through the page. That's the most exciting thing for me. And obviously, the artwork would have more time to develop, and you would return to the location to continue to develop it. And then it might spark off a different approach or different investigation. Yeah. So what a wonderful display of En Plein Air art, and we're really glad to have you on board, Laura. If you want to join Laura's 5-week course, which will start in mid-March, go to our website, www.lakehousearts.org.nz, and find our online classes, and you can sign up there.